For this part of today's webinar, we're going to spend about 15 or 20 minutes looking at one of the most practical tools in the Georgia ELA standards, the gum chart. I'll be honest, the gum chart may not look flashy at first glance, but it is one of the most helpful tools we have for understanding when students are expected to learn, practice, and master grammar usage and mechanics skills. The key idea I want us to hold on to today is this. The gum chart is not just a list of grammar skills. It's a vertical proficiency guide. It tells us when a skill is introduced and when students should be able to use that skill with proficiency. That matters because assessment should match the level of expectation. One of the most important points I want to emphasize is that introduction does not equal mastery. When a skill is introduced, students are encountering it, they're naming it, they're noticing it, and they're beginning to work with it. But when a skill reaches the proficiency or the mastery level, students should be able to recognize it, explain it, use it, revise with it, and apply it in context. That means our assessments need to reflect that level of proficiency expected at that grade level. If a skill is introduced in an earlier grade, we might assess it with recognition or guided practice. But if the gum chart indicates that students should be proficient by a certain grade level, then we need to assess whether they can actually use the skill in reading and writing. When we teach grammar, usage, and mechanics, it's easy to fall in one of these two traps. The first trap is teaching grammar in isolation. An example of this is just using worksheets, just giving rules, definitions, and then moving on, not giving students an opportunity to really get hands-on and practice the skill. The second trap is assuming students already know something because it appeared in an earlier grade level. Never assume that. The gum chart helps us avoid both of these traps. It gives us a way to ask better questions. Has this skill only been introduced? Is this a skill students should currently be practicing? Is this a skill students should now be able to apply with proficiency? Is this a skill that should transfer into reading, writing, speaking, and editing? That shift is very important. We are not just asking, did I cover this? We are asking what level of independence should students have with this skill at this grade level? One way to make the gum chart more usable is to think about assessment in three broad levels. First, can students recognize the concept? Second, can students explain how it works or why it matters? And third, can students apply it in their own writing, revision, or interpretation of a text? This is especially important because grammar instruction should not stop at merely identification. Identification is part of the process, but the goal here is always transfer. We want students to use the grammar, the usage, the mechanics, to make meaning, clarify ideas, shape tone, and improve communication. At the recognition level, students are identifying the grammar, usage, or mechanics concept. And this might look like which sentence uses commas correctly, which word is the subject pronoun, which sentence contains a participial phrase. These kinds of questions are useful, especially when a skill is new or when we're checking for foundational understanding. But recognition alone is not enough when the gum chart shows that students should be proficient. Recognition is the starting line, but it's certainly not the finish line. At the explanation level, students move beyond choosing the right answer. They explain why something is correct, effective, or meaningful. This might look like explain why the comma is needed in this sentence. Explain how the pronoun creates confusion. Explain how the use of parallel structure affects the rhythm or clarity of the sentence. This level helps students develop metalinguistic awareness, which is just a fancy way of saying they can think and talk about how language works. This is where grammar becomes more than just rule memorization. It becomes a tool for understanding and composing text. The application level is where we really see proficiency. Students may be asked to revise a sentence, combine sentences, edit a paragraph, or apply the skill in their own writing. For example, some test prompts might include revise the sentence to correct the vague pronoun reference, combine the sentences using a participial phrase, rewrite the sentence using parallel structure, edit the paragraph for consistent verb tense. This level matters because the Georgia standards are not asking students to simply label grammar concepts forever and ever. The standards are asking students to use language effectively as readers, writers, and communicators. Now, I want to show you how the assessment bank can help. This is one of the resources available to you today. This resource was designed so teachers do not have to start from scratch every time they need to assess a gum standard. Each item is connected to a specific grammar, usage, or mechanic skill. Teachers can use the bank to build short, formative checks. Bell ringers, exit tickets, quizzes are parts of a larger assessment. But here's the important part. Don't just pull random questions. Use the gum chart first. Be intentional. Ask what grade level you're teaching. What skills should students be introduced to? What skills should they be practicing? What skills should they be using to demonstrate proficiency? Then select assessment items that match that expectation. You also do not have to depend completely on this assessment bank. It was provided to help you, but you can come up with your own questions, you and your PLC. So here's a simple process you can use. Step 1, find your grade level on the gum chart. Step 2, identify the skills marked for introduction and the skills marked for proficiency or mastery. Step 3, choose 1 or 2 priority skills. Don't try to assess the entire universe of grammar in one sitting. That's how teachers end up frustrated and students end up very overwhelmed. Step 4, use the assessment bank to select items that match the skill and the level of proficiency. And step 5, review student responses to determine the next instructional move. That next move may be whole group reteaching, small group remediation, a quick warm-up, or targeted feedback during writing. Assessment should match the proficiency level. Do not overtest introduction skills. This is a very significant point. If a skill is only being introduced at a grade level, we should be careful not to assess it as if students should already be independent and proficient. An introduction level skill might be assessed through noticing, matching, sorting, or identifying. A proficiency level skill should require more independence. Students should be able to explain, revise, edit, or apply the skill in context. Now, it's great to have your gifted students, your more able students moving ahead and being more proficiency based in these skills. That's certainly where you want to be. But remember, when you are assessing, to make sure that you are assessing by the grade level noted on the gum chart. And this is where the gum chart protects us from unfair assessment. It helps us align our expectations with the developmental progressions in the standards. Now let's look at the companion resource. You've also been provided with it, in addition to the assessment bank, you've been provided with the gum cards or slides. These can be used as remediation cards, mini lesson slides, bell ringers, small group practice, or quick reteaching tools. These can actually be printed on 8x5 cards, or you can use them as slides. If you'll notice here in the photo, each card includes the standard, the grade level of proficiency. You'll notice that in the upper right, it's in a pink box. For example, the one on the screen is 3rd grade. And an example of the concept for practice or reteaching. So when students see these cards, they are going to see the level of proficiency. And so, that needs to be handled, of course, empathetically, and it needs to be handled carefully. We're not here to hurt feelings, but we are here to help students become proficient, and they need to see this. They need to see the data where they stand. and how they can improve. And that way, they'll work harder in determining where they are in your class. The structure matters here. It keeps this standards focused, okay? We're not just saying, let's review commas. We're saying, here's the specific gum skill. Here's where it lives in the grade level progression. And here's an example that you can use for practice. So this helps teachers, but this also helps students. These should be seen by students. These are not for teachers exactly. These are for students to see. And they will see the standard there and the proficiency level. There are many flexible and easy ways, other ways that teachers can use these. So let's kind of go over. I think I've mentioned some of these, but bell ringers. These are great bell ringers. Use them at the beginning of class. You actually could print them as little worksheets and hand them out as bell ringers. Have students keep them in a notebook. They would have a whole set in a short period of time. You can use a slide as a short reteaching tool. You could assign the cards to small groups based on your data that you've collected. You might even laminate the cards to make them last longer. Creating stations is an excellent idea, and these work well for that. These would be great for test prep. And also writing conferences. These would be great for students who are struggling when you are having a writing conference with them, to be able to hand them a card or two or three and say, these are some areas with which you need to work and become more proficient. Um, if a student's struggling with anything, then you can pull the matching card and it's a quick instructional tool. The real power comes from using both resources or all of these resources together. So not just the two resources I've provided, but also the gum chart itself. So think of the assessment bank as the diagnostic tool. Your gum chart is it's your vertical proficiency chart. So we're going to be able to ask, what do students know? What do they need to do? Where are they struggling? And then the gum cards, that's your instructional response. This is how we can take this and teach. Now, you will not just use these gum cards, but this is a very good starting point. And this will help you to answer, what do I teach next? What do I reteach? What do students need to do to practice? So the cycle looks something like this. Assess the skill, use the assessment bank, or create your own assessments. Analyze the student responses, identify the need, reteach or practice with the matching gum card or slide, reassess or look for transfer in their writing. This is a much stronger process than teaching grammar randomly or waiting until final drafts to mark every error with a pen of doom. The gum chart helps teachers plan less randomly. Instead of saying, I think we should review semicolons because it's first semester, we can say, based on the gum chart and our student writing, and based on our assessment, this is the skill students are expected to use with proficiency, and this is the instructional support they need. This is a more defensible, more focused, and more equitable way to teach grammar, usage, and mechanics. It also helps PLCs have better conversations. Teachers can look at the same skill, discuss what proficiency should look like, and choose common assessment items or common remediation slides. These resources can also support PLC work. A PLC might choose one gum skill for the week or for the unit. Then teachers can decide, what does proficiency look like? Which assessment items will we use? What student evidence are we going to collect? Which gum slides or cards will support students who need reteaching? And how will we know if students can transfer the skill into writing? That is so important. This creates a shared language for grammar instruction, and that is especially helpful because grammar can sometimes become a personal preference zone. One teacher may love sentence diagramming, another may love commas. Another teacher just wants everyone to stop writing fragments. We each have our areas that we like to teach and that we find important. But the chart and the resources help bring everyone back to the standards. So here are the big takeaways from this part of our webinar today. First, the gum chart is a vertical proficiency guide, not just a checklist. Second, introduction does not mean mastery. Third, assessment should match the level of proficiency expected at the grade level. Fourth, the assessment bank can help teachers build targeted, formative, or summative checks. Fifth, the gum cards or slides can support reteaching, remediation, practice, and writing conferences. And finally, the goal is always transfer. We want students to recognize grammar concepts, explain how language works, and apply those skills in their own reading, writing, speaking, and editing. The big idea is this: the gum chart gives us the progression. The assessment bank, as a resource, will help give you evidence. And then the gum cards give you an instructional response. When we use all three of these together, grammar instruction becomes more focused, more fair, and more connected to actual student needs. We move from covering grammar to helping students develop real control over language. I hope this session has provided support on how to effectively use the gum chart. Please make sure you refer to the tools mentioned here, the assessment bank and the gum cards, in our webinar classroom. And now we're going to return to our webinar for some more agenda items. Thank you.